Hello, my name's Emma Ellis. I'm one of the oncology support specialists at Force. For a number of years now, we've run a 6-week relaxation anxiety management programme, each session lasting for 2 hours. And we'd like to be able to make that more accessible to people. So we're doing a number of small videos, some downloadable resources that people can just dip into as and when they want to. So you can look at all of the videos, download all of the resources, or you can just pick out the ones that you think might be relevant to yourself. The first one that we're going to go with today is just an introduction to help you understand what's actually happening within the body when stress is happening, when the anxiety levels rise, and just to help you understand why you might start using some of the techniques to help manage that, to counterbalance the effects of stress. So what we need to remember is stress is actually an everyday fact of life. It's not something that we can escape. Stress is caused by any change that we might have to adjust to. Stressful events are usually thought of as being negative. So, for example, illness, injury or bereavement. In particular, the current situation around COVID-19 and living with the possible ripple effects on cancer and its treatments. However, positive change can also be stressful. So, for example, if you're moving house or looking to get a new job. We also need a certain amount of stress, and we could class this as good stress, to perform well in any challenging situation, like taking a test or returning something unsatisfactory to a shop. The problem starts really when stress gets out of control. So we go into the normal stress response, but then for whatever reason, we cannot get back out of it again, and the stress becomes chronic. In the past, stress was less of a problem. So, for example, in the Stone Age, a person would become stressed if a dangerous animal was approaching. They would then either stay and fight it, or they would run away. And we know this is the fight or flight reaction. In this way, stress would have been discharged by fighting or running away. You would have dispelled that build-up of the adrenaline in the body. What goes wrong in modern life is that we're often triggered into the stress response. So, for example, at traffic lights, by an unhelpful person, financial worries, concerns about health, the list goes on. But there's no appropriate way of relieving it. We may well have the urge to run or fight or sometimes freeze in terror. But it is usually not possible to have that desired reaction, to react in those ways. And this is where consciously learning ways to relax can be helpful. Relaxation is our body's natural antidote to stress. So when we feel stressed, our bodies can be flooded with chemicals, which then prepare for us to fight or run away or freeze. So animals in nature might play dead. In a real emergency situation where we really need to be alert, this is useful to us. But if someone is experiencing so much stress that these chemicals are always being activated and coursing through the system, it wears the body down, leaving you with much less energy and sometimes feeling less able to cope than you would do normally. We have already established that anxiety is a reaction to stress and prepares us for the fight, flight or freeze response. So how does this actually happen? Our nervous system controls all the actions and functions of our bodies, and one part of it is the somatic nervous system, and it's largely under our control, and it's the one that we use for tensing and relaxing our muscles. The other one, the autonomic system, is mainly concerned with the internal organs, so for example the intestines, the urogenital tract, blood vessels and heart. These two parts of the nervous system, the somatic and the autonomic, are linked in the brain and they affect one another. The autonomic nervous system is divided into 2 parts, so it's broken down into 2 more parts, and that's the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system, which have opposite functions. So the sympathetic system is designed mainly for rapid expenditure of energy. It's like the gas, if you like. It speeds you up. It controls everything that you do with the fight or flight response. And the parasympathetic deals with bodily routine functions, such as the digestion of food. It's like the brakes. It slows you down and relaxes you. It controls all your body functions that work in a relaxed state. So if you look at the image on the screen now, you can see how that's broken down. So you've got the somatic nervous system on your left, which is largely under our control, so it's the skeletal part of the bodies. And then you've got the autonomic nervous system, and that's everything else. We need the sympathetic nervous system in order to eat, to get up out of bed in the mornings, getting out of the way if a car is driving quicker than we anticipated crossing the road, exercises, etc. And it's when the sympathetic nervous system is overloaded that we become anxious or stressed, and it can have a counterproductive effect on our system. Therefore, if we encourage the parasympathetic nervous system through the use of relaxation and anxiety management techniques, the effects of stress and anxiety decrease and balance can be restored. And in the sessions that will follow on from this one, we go into a bit more detail in terms of what relaxation might look like for you, individually for you. And there's various different anxiety management techniques that you can explore. But if you just picture these two systems of the body as scales, you need them to both to be able to survive and to function. But with relaxation management, we can bring them back into balance. Relaxation techniques, they can help you to deepen your breathing, which this in turn reduces the stress hormones. It slows down your heart and blood pressure rate and relaxes your muscles. Research shows that relaxation can also increase energy and focus, help the body combat illness, relieve aches and pains, and heighten problem-solving abilities, and can also boost motivation and general productivity. But best of all, with a little practice, it is something that we can do for ourselves. So if you look at the image now of the stress mountain on your screen, this can be a really helpful way to understand your stress levels, where they might be, and when you need to start looking at what measures you're going to put in to maybe reduce the number on that scaling system you can see. So obviously the higher it goes, the more chronic your levels of stress might be, and when you really might start to notice that your everyday coping levels just aren't where they need to be. Your tolerance to things are a lot lower than they would be normally. So if you look at the top one there, we're looking at the normal stress pattern. So generally when we sleep and we're in that natural sleep range, a good night's sleep, we would be at around 1 or 2. And then the first stress that we might get in the day is when we get up out of bed. So that's when our body's having to go from being restful to having a boost of energy to get us up out of the bed. And then we would be ranging then between 2 and 4. When we're going around our general day and everything's going as well as we would hope for, we would stay within that range. But then we might have one of those one-off stressful events, which has got a limited impact on you. So, for example, you might be late for an appointment and you can't find a space to park your car. So for a moment, those levels go up. And that's when you might notice that they're going up between 4 and 6. But then what will happen is you find the parking space, you get to the appointment, and as you're in there and you're sat down and you're waiting, you notice that the levels start to drop back down again and get back to where you would normally be functioning. So if we look at the second mountain, that's concentrating on the upper part of the scale. So that might be when we start to notice that our stress levels are rising. And that can be as a result of a difficult stressful event. So for example, a diagnosis of cancer. Then you have that period of time, perhaps before the diagnosis, when you notice the stress levels go up, when you're not sure what might be going on. You might have a sense that there's some news coming. You get the diagnosis. So already that level's going up before diagnosis. And then there's that period of time when you're waiting to hear what that might mean. What are the treatments that you might be facing? What's coming next? You have the treatment, and then it's those thoughts about how is the treatment working, and then you've got the knock-on effects around that. So there's the ripple effects. So it's in how you tell your family and the people around you. So it can become chronic when you're dealing or you're living with a life situation that actually can't be neatly packaged. So it's not like you're finding a parking space and you can relax and you can move on. It's maybe something that you're carrying around with you. And that's where the levels of stress, if we're not mindful of where we are with them and looking at the ways that we can counteract that, can start to accumulate, become chronic, and the body is being flooded with those adrenaline type hormones too frequently, if you like, the tap's not being turned off. So what's really useful to think about is actually, where are you on that scale? What signs do you as an individual need to look out for when you know you're starting to become stressed? And we can go into that in a bit more detail in the upcoming sessions. So it's about clocking it as soon as possible when you start to notice the levels going up, and then looking at what you can do to counteract that. So as we were saying earlier about the scales, what can you do? So rather than focus on what the stress is, shifting your focus on to actually what can I do to try and encourage those other hormones through the body, so the endorphins, for example. And one way of managing that is actually looking at the bits that we know that help relax us, what brings us joy, what can we use to distract ourselves from these other things that are going on. And that's really individual. So what will work for one person won't work for another, but equally it's good to have a range of things that work for you, because something that might work on one day won't feel like it's meeting your need on another. And actually the length of times that some of these things might take. So for example, it's thinking about things that might take 5 or 10 minutes up to, if you're fortunate enough, having your, say, 2 weeks away. So it's taking note of what works for you and building up a repertoire of those things that can be really helpful, and just bringing back the balance as we were going back to those systems in the body. So it can be anything from soaking in a bath, sport. So it can be energetic. It doesn't need to be about lying down and listening to relaxing music, for example. It can be quite an energetic sport, listening to music. There are lots of creative ways of doing it. And as I'm talking, things are probably coming to mind to you now. So that's just giving you an idea of where we can start with this. And then in the upcoming weeks or in the upcoming sessions, what we will be looking at is the various different things that you can dovetail in. So as I mentioned earlier, ranging from relaxation techniques to breathing exercises, and then to some specific, almost CBT-like anxiety management techniques that we can introduce. So please look out for them, and they'll be very clearly marked, and you can just dip in and out of them as you wish. Some of them you will be able to print and actually write on and use as a resource at home. So I hope you found that information helpful. It's just a brief understanding of what's happening in the body when we are under stress and when the anxiety levels rise, and what's in our control to be able to bring balance back into that. What I would say is the more you put into it, the better the game for yourself. So if you're able to make some of these techniques, the breathing exercises, relaxation, part of a habit, part of your day, you will notice the benefits. There is definite correlation between the two. You will notice that some of the techniques resonate with you more than others, some that you will just know are not right for you. Don't persist with them. If they're not right, they're not right. When you look at the little videos and the techniques that you can download, you'll become familiar with some that you know are the old faithfuls that you can rely on, that will work for you. I always say to people in the course at the end, if you go away with 2 or 3 different techniques that work for you, you've gained something. And I don't think we've had anybody that hasn't noticed the benefit from doing the course and practicing some of the techniques. So I hope you find 1 or 2 or more that suit you. I wish you luck and take care.